There is a moment that is hard to explain. Until it happens to you. You start something. And then quietly, you just stop. Not because you are tired. Not because something interrupted you. Just a gentle fading of interest. It is a quiet Tuesday afternoon. You are sitting at the kitchen table, with a cup of coffee that is starting to cool. You open a book you have been meaning to finish. The first few pages feel easy, familiar, comfortable. You read a paragraph, then another. And then, somewhere in the middle of a sentence, you pause. Your eyes remain on the page, but the pull to continue fades. You close the book gently, almost without deciding to. A few minutes later, you glance at it again and wonder, why did I stop? I was just getting into it. There is no frustration, no sharp emotion, just a quiet fading, like a song slowly lowering in volume, until you realize it is no longer playing, and it is not only reading. You sit down at your computer to handle a few small things. Maybe reply to an email, organize a file, finish something simple. You begin. You engage. For a few minutes, everything flows. And then, something shifts. Your hands slow on the keyboard. You look at the screen. The task is still there. Nothing has changed. But something inside you has. You lean back slightly. And without choosing to, you stop. Even small things. You stand up to do something simple. Maybe to put something away. Or grab something from another room. Halfway there, you pause. For a second, you are not even sure why you got up. Not confusion. Not forgetfulness. Just a break in momentum. At first, it is easy to dismiss. But then it happens again. And again. Different tasks. Different moments. Always the same quiet pattern. You begin. You engage. And then, without warning, you disengage. And somewhere in the background, a question begins to form. Why can I not stay with things the way I used to? That question can feel heavier than the experience itself. Because it does not only touch what you are doing, it touches how you see yourself. You may start to wonder, am I losing focus? Am I becoming less disciplined? Is something wrong with my attention? And slowly, quietly, a layer of self-doubt begins to grow. But what if this is not a failure of discipline? What if nothing is broken? What if your brain is simply changing how it decides what is worth staying with? There is something researchers have been observing. As we move through our 50s and beyond, the brain begins to shift how it uses attention and motivation. Earlier in life, attention is often driven by novelty, new information, new tasks, new stimulation. And when something feels new, the brain releases more dopamine, the chemical linked to motivation and reward. That dopamine helps you stay engaged, even through small moments of boredom. But over time, that system becomes more stable, less reactive to novelty, less easily pulled by stimulation alone, and more sensitive to something else. Meaning, your brain begins to ask a different question. Not, is this interesting? But, is this worth my energy? So when you sit down to read, or organize, or reply to a message, your brain is quietly evaluating. Does this matter right now? And if the answer is not clear, the momentum fades. Not abruptly, but gently. There is another layer to this. Switching between tasks. What scientists call cognitive shifting. becomes more demanding over time. Not worse, just more costly in terms of energy. Each shift requires a little more effort than it used to, so your brain becomes more selective, more careful about where it invests that effort. It does not want to stay halfway inside something that no longer feels meaningful or complete. So it pulls back, and this is the part most people misunderstand. Because from the outside, it looks like something is fading, like your focus is weakening, like your discipline is slipping. But from the inside, something else is happening, something quieter, but far more precise. You are no longer pulled by everything. You are beginning to feel, more clearly than before, what actually deserves your attention. From the outside, this can look like inconsistency, like a loss of discipline. But internally, your brain is refining. It is no longer trying to do everything. It is trying to do what actually matters. And here is the challenge. Most daily tasks do not clearly signal that they matter. Reading a few pages, replying to a message, tidying a drawer. They exist in a gray space. Not meaningless, but not deeply meaningful either. And without a clear signal, your brain quietly steps away. So what can you do with this? Not by forcing yourself harder, but by working with how your attention now naturally operates. First, give your task a clear boundary before you begin. Not, I will do this for a while, but, I will read 3 pages. I will finish just this section. A defined endpoint gives your brain something to hold on to. It knows where the effort leads, and that makes it easier to stay. Second, notice the moment the fade begins. Not to resist it, just to recognize it. You might think, this is where my attention is starting to drift. That small awareness often creates a pause. Inside the pause, and sometimes, that is enough to stay a little longer. Third, gently reconnect the task to meaning. Not pressure. Meaning. Instead of, I should reply to this message, you might shift to, this is someone I care about. Instead of, I need to finish this. You might think, this is part of the space I live in. Meaning gives your attention a reason to stay, without forcing it. And over time, something subtle begins to change. You may still stop halfway sometimes, but you begin to understand why. And that understanding softens the self-doubt. Because this is not about losing your ability to focus. It is about your mind becoming more selective with where it places its attention. You are no longer running on automatic momentum. You are choosing, often quietly, often unconsciously, what deserves your energy. And maybe the better question is not, why can I not stay with things the way I used to? But, what actually feels worth staying with now? That question does not take anything away from you. It brings you closer to how your mind is evolving. So the next time you find yourself pausing, halfway through something, take a moment, not to judge, just to notice, because that pause, it is not a sign of decline. It is a signal, a quiet, intelligent adjustment. Your brain is learning to use your energy differently, more carefully, more intentionally. And once you begin to see it, you may never experience it the same way again. Because in that shift, there is nothing broken, only something changing, and perhaps, something becoming clearer than before.